Hey everyone, welcome to the first Osiris Live Couch Report, brought to you by Relix. Thanks to Relix for putting this together, and thanks to our producer Jonathan Healy for making this all happen. I'm RJ from the Helping Friendly Podcast. I'm here with my Helping Friendly Podcast colleague Matt.
Hey everyone.
And with Tom, who's from a podcast called Under the Scales.
Hey there.
We are aiming to bring you couch reports whenever Fish will be webcasting, so we want to do some pre-show, set break, and post-show breakdowns. Tonight's the first time we'll be doing this, and tonight we're going to do a pre-show and set break because post-show I think everyone will be asleep, or at least I'll be asleep. These guys might still be awake, but we're going to try this out, and we'll be back in a couple weeks, and you'll hear more about it through YouTube and Twitter and Facebook. We're on the internets at Osiris Pod and at HF Pod. Tom is at Under the Scales, but you can find us anywhere, and thanks again to Relix. We will not interrupt your live fish webcast experience. Our goal is to provide content before and after and at set break. So tweet us some photos of your couch tour setup if you have them. Tweet at OsirisPod and use the hashtag couch report. And we'll show you some of those at set break when we come back. So guys, welcome. This will be fun. We're in Washington, D.C., in our nation's capital. We're far away from the White House, but we do have some local beer. Last time Tom and I did this, from Tahoe, we were drinking a local beer called Fluffhead Pale Ale. Today we're drinking a beer called Dance of Days from Atlas Brewing in D.C., so
thanks,
cheers
Atlas.
to everyone out there, and cheers to Atlas.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
We're on a couch, and
we're on a couch, and
here's our report.
Here's our report. So guys, there have been 3 shows so far. We're going into show number 4 tonight. We were talking about a couple of themes that had sort of been apparent to us through those first 3 shows. And so maybe we can just talk a little bit about that, and then we can run through the shows sort of show by show. The first thing is the Trey's effects and how those have sort of influenced the jamming and influenced the playing. And I know, Tom, when we were in Tahoe, you were sort of showing me some interesting things about the effects. Do you want to kick that discussion off?
Sure. Well, what I was talking about specifically during that discussion that you and I had was the Mutron. I call it the Mutron sound that Trey pumps into his Leslie speaker, which is a rotating speaker. Gives sort of an organ type effect. And when I heard it a lot, more than Trey's ever used it, was at his Central Park Tab show. And it was everywhere. And it kind of made sense because he wasn't expecting to have a keyboard player. Ray actually, luckily, was able to play, but Trey was still using it quite a bit. And I was excited to see it at Tahoe Night 1 a lot. It was all over. And Trey was kind of using it. I kind of felt like it was going to become a solo tool. Mm-hmm. And then Tahoe Night 2, it kind of disappeared. Is that what you guys felt?
Yeah, it was definitely a lot more prominent the first night. And what I thought, and I think a lot of people were saying the same thing, is it almost felt like he was trying it out a lot that first night. Just, new bag of tricks, trying to see where he could integrate it with the band, where it makes sense in the various jams. But it's interesting because the origin of a lot of this, including the loops that he's playing off of a MacBook Pro that's off stage, and then the additional Leslie, goes back to the solo acoustic tour from this winter, where he was using those loops to create some ambience that he could solo over with his acoustic guitar when he was by himself. He did the same thing and added the Leslies for the trio tour in April. That continued. I actually saw Trey the night before you did in Charlottesville, and was doing the same sort of effect even with Ray there. But it was neat to see that this existed in the Fish world now, because I think that was a big question of whether he was going to bring that to Fish or whether that was going to stay, just a part of his tab sound. And I noticed it's almost like an extension of what Trey's done in the past with the mini percussion kit or the keyboard, or even when he steps over to the Marimba Lumina, is an opportunity for him to sort of lay back a little bit, add some texture to the jam, and maybe let one of the other guys, namely Paige or Mike, step up melodically and kind of take things in a different direction. And I think where this really started to take hold, as we'll talk about when we dive into last night's show, was the first night at the Gorge, and particularly the light jam. What I noticed was Trey backing off, adding some of this ambience, and then Paige stepping up and playing on the Rhodes and taking the lead. And I think what we might see as the tour develops is those guys sensing that and hearing it a little bit earlier and jumping right in rather than sort of waiting for it to develop and then take over. So really exciting and always cool to see something like this evolve over the course of a tour.
Right. So actually, Tahoe second night, it did kind of come back and more like you said as a texture rather than a solo tool during Blaze On, and that was sort of in a kind of a happy, energetic jam, but also in kind of a quiet, sort of more relaxed part of Limb by Limb.
Right.
And it was really exciting to see the way it was being used. And again, we did get it Gorge first night, but we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
So it seems like I think people think about guitar effects as supporting the lead guitarist in like making more awesome guitar, but with the way you guys are talking about it, it's more of a support. It's more to support everyone else's leads than it is for him to necessarily like shred more interestingly, or maybe both.
Yeah, it kind of instead of making like a lot of the effects that he uses, like the Mutron is a great example. It kind of makes him cut through the mix a little bit more and stand out. This is allowing him to sort of not be the featured player, but add to the lushness of the sound, and then maybe let Paige or Mike step up and kind of lead the melody of the jam.
So guys, the other theme that I was sort of observing personally was just that the newer songs seem to be better vehicles for like exploration earlier on the tour. In 2017 we saw Everything's Right a couple times, including a Baker's Dozen. Soul Planet, I think, which we can talk about, the first night of Tahoe, I thought was a really interesting jam. It seems like those are both Trey songs, and one written by you, Tom, but it does seem like those new songs kind of give them a little bit more of a fresh perspective to improvise on. That was the other thing which we can get into. Let's go show by show quickly. I mean, the first night of the Gorge, first night of Tahoe, Matt, reminded me of something you said after 1228 last year, which is that Trey was just dicking around with his pedals a bunch. I don't know if you feel the same way about the first night of Tahoe, because he was sort of using the effects sort of intermittently throughout the show, but there wasn't as much meandering, I think, as the New Year's run. But it does seem like every tour he's like introducing new effects and new equipment and continuing to evolve, which I guess could throw things off, but also ends up complementing everything in the long run.
Yeah, and maybe the difference here is that those new effects over the New Year's run were a little bit more in your face, so it felt like if the great example of somebody playing a keyboard and changing the sound constantly and trying to get it right. It maybe wasn't as apparent if he's adding those loops or those textures, that he's trying some different things out.
So the first set of the first night of Tahoe, there was a mid-first set Ghost, which was, I think, 16 minutes. They really sort of got after it there. And a pretty cool jam there, a nice exploratory jam. But I think, Tom, the Funky Bitch was sort of the first song of that set that really caught your attention, right?
Yeah, I remember kind of, liking the energy, liking everything about it. The first four songs, Free, Possum, Mama Dance, Ghost. But it kind of wasn't until he turned the effects off and stepped up with just Trey power guitar, just him, the guitar and the amplifier for Funky Bitch, and like American power guitar, and he really delivered. And the same thing was happening with Mike. His singing was fantastic. They really caught my attention for Funky Bitch, and that was that was when the show began for me in a way.
Yeah. And the set 2 opener, No Man in No Man's Land, was a big, opener.
That's fantastic.
Really, really cool, and used a lot of different sort of effects. I don't know if that encapsulates what you guys were talking about, but that was a pretty cool and long jam.
Yeah, I think that was another case we were talking about earlier, where that Leslie effect became real prominent at times.
Yep.
And the Carini and the Slave was beautiful out there under the beautiful sky, cloudless sky. But the Soul Planet, I thought, was really cool. As I mentioned earlier, that I think that had some of the most exploratory sort of jamming, and was not really sort of like a blissful jam as you might expect. It was pretty cool though.
Yeah, that was really good, and I actually was surprised going back to those Trey Trio shows. The show that I saw in Charlottesville, they played Soul Planet, and I was actually really surprised. That may have been the best song of the night. Probably the song where they diverted from the typical jam, the furthest that they did the whole night. So I think some of these songs, Ghost that was played in the first set, Soul Planet that maybe were getting played with the trio were a little bit more top of mind for Trey, and he's kind of stepping right back into what he had just been doing a couple weeks ago.
I'm a sucker for Steam, so Steam was my favorite for second set.
Yeah, that was cool, and then a really long and really kind of quiet Harry Hood, to close out the second set, which was cool. I will admit that I was walking during contact, but I won't say anything more than that, because it had been a very, very long day for me. The second night of Tahoe, we were back and well rested and ready to go. And to me, the first highlight of that show was the Everything's Right in the first set, which I thought had a lot of really cool exploratory jamming. I think it was like 12 or 13 minutes.
Yep, I'm with you on that. Everything's Right was a highlight for me.
The rest of that set really did sort of a bunch of songs happened. 7 or 8 songs, and then when Bathtub Gin, the jam started.
Ocelot kind of gets an asterisk.
That's true. Yeah, that had a little bit of like a different turn in the jam. It wasn't like the Southern rock sort of jam. It was a little bit different. But then when the Bathtub Gin jam started, Tom turned to me and said, "This is what we've been waiting for.
This is what we were waiting for."
And it's become such a reliable first set closing jam. It's just such a great, a great, powerful, really upbeat, high tempo jam.
Absolutely.
What about the second set? Anything notable there for you guys? I got my
Blaze On.
Yeah, Tom got a Blaze On. I got it down with the Z's, which happens to me every time. Thank you, everybody. So what's your take on Blaze On, Tom?
Blaze On was the first use of the Leslie for Trey that I detected. And it was, again, used sparingly. And I had expected it a lot more. And I kind of almost thought, well, maybe it doesn't work. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly it came back. And then I thought, all right, well, now there's a marked different philosophy in Trey's use of it. Mm-hmm. And so while I had predicted that we're going to see a whole lot like night one, we didn't. And now we're kind of seeing it in a spare sort of way. Yeah. So I'm not usually that much of an analyst of Trey's effects, but this one is so different that you can't not analyze it.
And it went into, I always wanted it this way, which I think it's really cool to hear Page sort of out there in front with all his different sounds is the way that I describe it, that I don't think you hear in a lot of other Fish songs.
Yeah, and I don't know that there's any other song in their entire repertoire that sounds anything like it. It's one of the most modern sounding songs that they have with the synths, and such a departure. And I loved in this set the way that the Blaze On jam just very delicately kind of gave way to I Always Wanted It This Way. I love it when they just sort of send you into this moment where you can almost hear a pin drop and then manage to get it into another song right after that.
Yeah. Really good, and then Into Joy, and then the Limb by Limb, which I think was a notable jam for you, Tom.
Yep. Again, Limb by Limb toward the end, like the second half of Limb by Limb, the Leslie was in play again, in a much quieter way, accenting and highlighting Page, rather than obscuring.
And then we got a 2001 You Enjoy Myself to close out, which no one's going to complain about. That was a really nice way to end the 2-night run. And then they went on to the Gorge. Last night was the first night of the Gorge. Opened up with Set Your Soul Free, which Fish debut. And Tom, people have asked or will ask, did you write that song?
Yeah, I got a lot of questions. Tom, are these your lyrics? And no. And I'm even. It's sort of unusual to notice that of the several Trey new songs, I call them new, even though they're probably over 2 years now. But Soul Planet and Set Your Soul Free. So I'm happy that Trey's writing about his soul. It's good to explore where you've been and where you're going and make it kind of a spiritual thing. Some people refer to a Fish concert as a religious experience, and I'm happy to see Trey kind of highlighting it that way. But Set Your Soul Free were my lyrics. I think I would leave open the interpretation for a darker sort of meaning for it. Shocked and persuaded my soul to ignite kind of lyrics over Trey. I think he's just 100% happiness and, get the energy going, set your soul free, start dancing kind of thing, set the gear shift for the high gear of your soul, not to overuse the soul thing.
There's a lot of soul in there.
Yeah, so there's soul happening. And no, I did not write it, and I'm happy to see Trey writing these cool songs. And I got to say, I think just like, pre-game jitters for sports players, I think Gorge tour opener, or Gorge, whatever you call it, the Gorge Run opener, they had jitters like coming out there, and they also possibly had jitters for playing the song for the first time, and the jitters combined and made them just absolutely nail it. Trey delivered the lyrics, he delivered his guitar playing, and the rest of the band was just on it. They rehearsed it well. It was a great opener.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that, because Tahoe, I think the capacity or the people they're playing to, like 9,000 versus 27,000 or something at the Gorge, so 3 times as many people. So you got to walk out there and see, 3 times as many people.
You got to walk out there and kind of hit at least a triple, and I think they did.
Yeah.
Well, I mentioned on our Helping Friendly podcast, Quick Hit today, when you watch the webcasts, there was... Trey had a really interesting expression when he came out at the beginning. I think there was a big gust of wind that almost knocked him over, and he kind of had to re-catch his balance.
Wow.
But he also, the first time he sort of looked out and saw the whole crowd, he did one of these like, wow. Like, he was really just inspired to be there. And
yeah.
I think adds to what you were saying, Tom, about, just being fired up and ready to start the show off strong.
So 5 years since they played at the Gorge, right? Was 2013 the last time? Or they played there in
2016.
Okay.
Yeah.
This Set Your Soul Free had sort of a Hendrix sort of sound when I was listening to it. It was reminding me of like a Hendrix song. It was a cool song. I did not heard that before. Did they play it on the Tab tour?
I don't think it was played on the recent Trio tour, but it's been played by Tab in the past. Yeah.
So Wolfman's Brother, which was, if you picked that, you were in luck, which I think a lot of people did, because it was sort of the first set song that hadn't been played yet, right? Rogue, now we know, right?
Rogue.
Our friend Jonathan will always say Roger, but it's just not. Sorry. Into Poor Heart, and then there's an Undermined into Simple, which I think you guys had some thoughts about.
I circled it, both the songs, as kind of my highlight, but I don't have any. I think you had a good analysis of it.
Well, yeah. So first off, Undermined in this set, this was the first song that was played that went back to not having been played since last summer at the Baker's Dozen. All the other, except for Set Your Soul Free, the other songs that we heard had been played as recently as the New Year's set. But then it was a fantastic Undermined, but then that Simple, wow.
Right. Wow. Simple overshadowed how good Undermined was, and it really was one of my favorite Underminds. I drove down here from Princeton, New Jersey. It should take 3 hours. It took 4 because of the rain, and I played Undermined 3 times.
Wow. That's pretty good, especially for someone who doesn't revisit Fish a lot.
I don't.
Specific shows.
No, but I wanted to come up with something to say. I don't have a lot to say apart from listen to it. It's a great Undermined. And
the Simple was sort of dark, exploratory. It had a lot of interesting effects in there.
It got dark, and then I think just similar to, we mentioned the Ghost from the first night, almost had that Trey Trio kind of thing where they brought it back to the head again. He played the Simple lick at the end, which never happens in Simple. I mean, usually,
and they even kind of tried to slow it down.
Right.
It was a good ending.
Yeah, it was a great ending. You never hear that, and got way darker than Simple usually gets. So it was an absolutely standout version. Maybe the best jam of the show.
And then Yamar, which I think Under the Sky and the Gorge is probably a really nice song to hear. In between that and Sand, which is always a great intense set closer, which I think set the stage for set 2. The Chalk Dust, the long Chalk Dust, which I wanted at Tahoe, but Tom delivered the Down with Disease instead.
You're welcome.
Thank you. They got a long Chalk Dust Torture, which was like 23 minutes?
24-ish, and not only the longest jam of the tour so far, but actually the third longest Chalk Dust Torture ever. So can you guys guess what the two that are beat it?
I know he knows, so I'm going to guess.
Okay.
I know that Baker's Dozen one was long.
Yeah, that's number 2.
Now it's number 2.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, now it's number 2.
Okay,
now it's number
so 2. I was right. That was the longest one.
I would.
Yes.
My mind.
No. So I'm sorry. This is the third longest Chalk Dust Torture. So that's been number 2. This bumped something else out of the way.
There's even a longer one.
So there's a longer one.
Okay.
Do you know what the longest Chalk Dust Torture ever is?
I couldn't possibly.
My first guesses would be Dick's 2013 or Blossom 2015, but I don't think those are right.
Randall's Island. That Sunday version that was about 27 minutes.
That second set of
that
Randall's
was my
Island.
third guess. That would have been
a really cool jam. Reminded me of a Baker's Dozen jam, this one, in that there was a lot of like themes that they were kind of cycling through.
Definitely.
I mean, in a great way. I was at the 728 show, and that was my favorite Baker's Dozen show by a lot. So that was a complimentary take on the Chalk Dust. Into My Friend, which is not like a cool down song that you would expect. Maybe expect like a ballad or something else, but it's just such a crazy song to go into after a 24-minute jam.
Yep.
Into Fuego, which you noted, I didn't note. You like the Fuego?
Yeah, that was my note. I liked it.
Into Sparkle, which we know from Tom is a really happy song about marriage.
Yes,
Wonderful,
exactly.
And actually, the biggest bust out last night. No
Sparkle?
crazy gaps. Yeah, with Sparkle, it was 22 shows going back to the Baker's Dozen last year. The next biggest bust out was the song that followed it in the set, which had been played the next night at the Baker's Dozen, so had a 21 show gap, and that's Haley's Comet.
So I guess if people are paying attention to the stats like that, you're going to not see as many bust outs because there were so many songs played in 2017, right?
Right.
It's just fewer sort of huge bust outs. There's not that many songs left that they could bust out that wouldn't be from 2017.
Yeah, although you'd be surprised. I mean, every time I look at the list, if we're playing Lore Social or something like that, I'm like, I can't believe they haven't played that in 2 years.
Any come to mind?
One that I saw was Albuquerque. Hasn't been played in a couple of years. Of course, that's a cover. And then Fast Enough for You, I don't think has been played.
Really?
Wow.
Since maybe the first Mexico.
Wow.
It's gone back a little. So yeah, there's always those songs that you forget about and haven't read their head in a little while.
Yeah, there's hundreds. So the Haleys went into Light. And so Tom, maybe you could talk a little bit about Light. I know it's a song that you wrote, and I think there's some rumors out there or thoughts that Trey was sort of influenced by reading about Buddhism.
Yeah.
This was the first played in 2009, right? So the song's been around for a while.
Right. I think I mentioned Buddhism when I talked about how that song was written a long time ago, maybe for the Fishnet song history or something. But it itself doesn't have anything to do with Buddhism. I believe the book that I got it from, which is called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, possibly was influenced by some of the Buddhist holy texts. So Trey had a bunch of these in his bookshelf, and a period of his life he was actually carrying around some of that stuff and recommended, rather than digging deep, starting with The Power of Now. And to me, it's gobbledygook. Try to read that. Sorry, Mr. Eckhart Tolle, but and I read a lot.
He's probably watching.
Yeah, he's watching right now. I had a lot of trouble reading that, but basically 4 pages in, I had the song Light written, because one of the first thing he says, to really achieve the power of now, and what that is to really respect it. You have no problems in the future. You have no problems in the past. Everything is now, and therefore, because now is just so instantaneous, you have no problems. And if you can really accept that, to get to that acceptance, you have to also imagine yourself separate from your mind. So I just said I could see the light between me and my mind, and a few of the other things, stepping stones and other things, were right from like the first 4 pages of that book.
Nice.
Yeah, so not really Buddhist.
But it happened on a songwriting trip when you guys were going through.
Yeah, more like just a visit to Trey.
Okay, cool. And that jam, I think you guys mentioned earlier, there was some of that, the Leslie that showed back up in that.
That was where I heard last night Trey laying back with the loops a little bit, and Paige jumping in a lot faster with the Rhodes to take over. So if you want to hear an example of what we're talking about, that's a really great piece to listen to.
Nice. And then Waste, which, Tom, I know people talk to you about often. And can you tell people a little bit about that song in the background?
Song, yeah, sure. That song, more than any, I get approached by people telling me how much they like it, and more often than not telling me that that's the song that they chose as their wedding song, the song they got married to, which is always a huge compliment, you know, that someone chooses that for one of their most important days. And it's kind of crazy because it almost didn't get written. Trey and I were at the Cayman Islands. I think this was 1994. We went on a scuba diving songwriting trip, and he and I both had our scuba licenses. So we scuba dove by day and wrote songs by night. And he brought a lot of musical ideas, and I brought a lot of lyrics. And there's sort of this nervous energy. Are we gonna, we can't waste money. We have to make sure that we write some songs. And before long, we had Character Zero and Prince Caspian written, and Cayman Review, which he plays in Tab.
Yeah.
And so I think the pressure was off. Like, we have some songs, everything's cool, and we're taking a breath a little bit. And that's when the good stuff happens, when you're sort of not expecting it. Trey was sitting by himself playing this sort of riff, which became the chords for Waste. and he was kind of humming just na 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 na, and I just wrote in the cadence that he was humming, and I showed it to him. I said, "Don't want to be an actor pretending on the stage," and he's like, "Yeah, write the second line." And then before long,
like, shit.
and so that started kind of like in the morning. So we worked all day painstakingly figuring out the harmonies, the so if I'm inside your head, all those multiple parts, listen to it, there's at least 3 distinct parts, and each one took us 4 or 5 hours to get right. And the problem was we were fighting with our demons, and the demons we were fighting with, like, one of the cool things about collaborating with Trey and vice versa, I think he would say about me, is that we are extremely open to ideas from the other guy. We listen to the whole idea. We never say, "Oh man, that sucks, let's go on to the next one." But he and I were both struggling with, we might be writing a really, really cheesy "Wind Beneath My Wings" song here. And we were really like, because we'd never written like a love song, right? We'd just written Character Zero, for Christ's sake. I ought to be the man, okay, see the man, okay. So here we are writing this, a love song. And on the very first original recording of it, and I still have it, we were so unconvinced that we had a good song, and we were starving. Trey and I practiced it, and he pressed record, and he says on the original version of it, when we finally got it all done and written, he says, "This is going to be a joke, but let's record it anyway." And we sang it, pressed stop, went and ate, came back, and we were like, "Oh my God, this is an amazing song," and realized that the fact that we had pushed through all those doubts, made a better song. And I kind of think what my dad said, step out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Because that's where the good stuff happens.
That's amazing. That's really cool. So that was a late second set of the first night of the Gorge, and then Rock and Roll closed the set, and then there was a Tube Golgi closer.
Tube Golgi, yeah, in the encore, and
or encore, yeah.
I was thinking last night, these are 2 sort of science related songs, right? And I started thinking about, like, wow, have these songs been paired together before? So this was actually the 3rd time ever that they have been played back to back, one or the other. So this science duo, we got it for the 3rd time.
There's microscope mentioned in Golgi. Is there a microscope in Tube, or just test tube?
I guess it's the test tube. Well, in science.
I
it's hashtag science.
And then
duo.
of course the Golgi apparatus is a part of the set.
Part of the set, right?
Yeah.
That's amazing. It's the hashtag science deal.
My wife, who's a biochemist, is going to love that. She's very proud of me.
So, guys, we're gonna get people. We have a little time till the fish stream starts. Go to livefish.com, obviously, to watch the show. Any surprises so far for you guys in terms of the first 3 shows? Like, anything stand out in terms of what's been played, what hasn't been played, how everything's been played, or anything else? Or do you feel like it's been a pretty predictable few first shows?
High quality, very early. There was great stuff on night 1, and it's ramped up very quickly. So similar to some other great tours that we've seen, I have a really good feeling that we could be seeing some great stuff this summer.
Yeah.
Also surprised to see Yem so early in the tour. Usually they hold that back a little bit. But,
right.
So I'm excited.
I think Matt summed it up pretty good. Definitely. I'm very enthused by the quality of the playing.
Yeah.
I think this last night was amazing. Really amazing.
Yeah, and we saw the first night in Tahoe, and it's interesting to think back on other tour openers, just to the quality point. There's a lot of tours that started with several shows that were more or less like, warm up shows, and that's just not where they are anymore. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Any predictions for the first set? We're going to come back at set break and talk a little bit about the first set. Any predictions, Tom?
Before that,
yes.
Remember to send us your cool couch tour setup.
Yes.
We're going to show a lot of them, at least 10 at set break. Okay, at least 5 at set break. And we already have a few in there, and there's already one really good one that seems to be winning. Maybe we'll turn it into a contest next time.
Yeah.
But
and what's the best way for everybody to get them to us?
Get those to us. Possibly tweet them to us at Osiris Pod.
And use the hashtag Couch Report.
And use exactly what he said. And as far as my prediction, it's the boring one.
Yeah.
You can guess.
I know what it is. It's Punch You in the Eye Opener.
Punch You in the Eye Opener.
Matt?
I feel Tweezer coming, and I think maybe this is one of those nights where Tweezer happens in the first set. So I'm gonna put my chips on Tweezer.
All right, I'm gonna go with the first set Reba as my prediction. It seems like the Gorge, the outdoor vibes will be strong. I hope the people there are having a blast, and I hope you all at home have enjoyed our banter and commentary. And again, we'll be doing this couch report as often as we can around the live fish webcasts. And we hope everybody has a good first set. We'll see you back here at set break. Until then,
quick shout out to our producer. Thank you, Jonathan Helix.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Jonathan came all the way down to DC to help us with this, and he's been super helpful getting this going for the past several months, actually. So thank you, Jonathan, and thanks to Relix for doing this. And you can find us on the internet at Osiris Pod and of course Relix Magazine. We appreciate their partnership. So thanks everybody. Have a good first set. We'll see you back here at Set Break.